Hello, everyone, and welcome to ActionKit Advocacy 101. We're going to give a brief overview of all of the things that you can do in ActionKit related to advocacy. So think things like petitions and delivery and call pages, all of those sorts of things. So my name is Shannon Turner, and I am a software developer with ActionKit and also a former ActionKit client. So many of the things that you'll see today um, is going to be pretty general guidance, but I've also added in a little bit of flavor of some of the things that I used to do as a client. One of the things that I love about ActionKit is just how customizable it is. And one thing I want to say before we get started is I know that every client uses ActionKit just a little bit differently, and that's great because it means that our clients are always innovating and always trying out new things. But it is important to remember that the things that you might see on the screen, the workflows and the ways that you do things might look a little bit different in your organization versus what you're seeing here today. That's totally fine. This is general guidance. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be covering today. So first, we're going to start off with pages, including what different types of pages are available, what are the differences between all of the different types, how you can create and customize those pages, how you can create targeting and deliver your petitions to those targets, and then view the page performance. After that, we're going to move on to creating and customizing your mailings and then personalizing those mailings to individual recipients. And then finally, targeting your mailings and viewing their overall performance. Once we've done that, we're going to talk very briefly about users and how to search for them, how to browse user data like action and mailing and donation history. And then we won't spend a ton of time on this, but we are going to cover reports very briefly. In truth, reports really deserve their own 90-minute training because there's so much ground to cover that we really can't do the topic justice in about 15 minutes. But I think it's worth doing a lightning review of the highlights so that you can see, what's possible and then continue learning on your own. So let's go ahead and get started with pages. On screen here, I have the Pages tab, where on the left-hand side of the screen, you can browse recently created pages. You can see details like the title, you can see the notes, you can see tags that are associated with the page, you can see what type of page it is, how many users have taken action. You can edit the page, you can view the page, or you could even make a copy of the page. And on the right-hand side, you can see the navigation menu. Here, I've expanded the Add Page menu to reveal many of the different page types that we can create. Now, this screenshot doesn't show all of the available page types on purpose, but just the main ones. And if you were to click on Petition or Call here, then you could begin to create a page of that type. Another way that you can create a page would be to copy an existing page that's similar to the one that you want to create. So here I've highlighted the copy button in red. You can also often save time when you're creating a new page by copying a similar one, just changing the details that are different. But if you do find yourself copying from old pages frequently, I might recommend setting up a page model. So a page model is a special type of page that you can customize. Think of it as a template that you can copy and work off of. So here I have a petition model. It has everything set up as a template for everything I do when I'm creating a petition. And so when I need to make a new petition, I can just create one from here. So I'm not going to go into creating page models today, but I did want to point them out because if your team already has a page model set up, you'll probably want to use them, and this is where you can find them. This training is focused on advocacy, and it's just a 101, so I'm not going to be covering every single type of page today, just focusing on the most commonly used types of pages. We're going to start off with sign-up pages, and these are commonly used on the front page of your website. They're really quick and easy to get new members, and I think of them as not necessarily being associated with a specific issue or a campaign. Petition pages, on the other hand, are the most commonly type used page in ActionKit, and they're used for general actions. You have the option to deliver petition signatures to Congress or to other legislators, and you could also print them off and to deliver them to other types of targets like the CEO of a corporation. Letter pages are similar to petitions, but they require a comment from the user. Petitions can have comments, but they're optional by default. Call pages allow you to define a set of targets and send your members to call them. So, for example, calling Congress to tell them to keep Obamacare. You can set up the targeting, so for instance, the US House, and then you get people will get the option to call their specific congressperson. Letter to the editor pages allow you to get members to submit letters to the editor of their local and national newspapers. And whip count pages are used for two things. One, for calling to persuade, oh, you should vote this way, but also to figure out how your target, where they stand on a particular issue and who still needs to be persuaded to vote your way. When you're creating a page, there's some things that are common to every type of page, and that's what we're going to see here on the Action Basics screen. So the first thing that we need to do is give our page a title. So I've given mine the title, End Subsidies for Big Oil. And as I've given this page my title, as I've typed it in, the short name is auto-generated. I can also change the short name after it's been auto-generated if I like, that's fine. But both the title and the short name are going to appear. Short name appears in the URL, the title appears on the page. These are both visible to the public. So just keep that in mind. When visitors go to your page, they're going to see both of these. And that stands in contrast to the notes and the tags. When visitors go to your page, they're not going to see the notes. They're not going to see the tags. These are really for internal use only. The notes are used for you and your staff to describe, what is this page all about? What's it for? Why did we make it? And the tags, I like to think of those as ways of categorizing your pages. The tags work the best when you have a few tags that are very descriptive for lots of different types of pages. So climate change is something that I'm going to use on lots of different pages to describe any page that relates to climate change. If I need to be super descriptive, like, oh, this is the congressional petition to end fossil fuel subsidies, I can put that in the notes. The tags are really good for broad strokes, broad categories that apply to lots of different things. A couple more things that are common to every page type are the multilingual options and the custom page fields. I'm not going to go into the multilingual options right now, but here's how they work. If you're running a campaign in multiple languages, you'll create multiple pages. You'll then translate content into the languages that you're using, and then you're going to tie them all together by listing them under the same multilingual campaign. I'm also not going to go into advanced options. This is a 101, not the place for advanced. And we only have limited time, but I did want to point out that if you're looking for them, this is where you'll find them on the Action Basics page. Next, let's move on to custom page fields. These are special fields that you can customize on a per page basis that can modify the look and feel and functionality of your page. You have full control over what custom page fields do, and you can create your own and embed them in the layout of your pages. In truth, custom page fields really deserve their own training, and we have lots of resources in the tutorials on our blog, which I'll share at the very end of this presentation. It'll be the last slide. There's a link. So lots of ways to continue learning there and create your own custom page fields. But for now, just want to be brief and point out a couple of custom page fields that I do have and what they do. The first field, custom CSS, allows me to add in custom CSS code to my pages, which makes customizing how my pages look very easy. This custom page field says, I want to change the background color of my submit button. This second custom page field, featured image, allows me to embed an image on the page. I can also upload new images by clicking on the plus sign. Now, some options really only make sense for certain types of pages. So for instance, a letter to the editor page is going to have different options than a call page or a petition page. So here are the options for a letter to the editor page, where we can choose which types of newspapers get included. So should we allow the user to submit letters to the editor for their local and regional papers? How about their national? Should we include phone numbers for the newspapers as well? Things like that. And here are the options for a call page where you need to choose the targets. Who is going to receive these phone calls? Who are you trying to get your members to call? Are these legislative targets, like their representative or their senators? Is it their state rep or their state senators? All four of those categories are built into ActionKit, so you don't have to collect that data yourself. We've taken care of that for you. Here in this example, I've chosen the US Senate as the target group. You could also create a custom target group. So for instance, being able to call the corporate headquarters of a set of companies. And depending on how you've set up your targeting, one of your members might not have anybody to call. So for instance, if your targeting is set up to call all House Democrats, will you give your members who have a Republican representative something to do? Or will they see, sorry, this action is not available in your area? So the fallback page URL is used to say, oh, if we don't have a target for you in this target group, here's who you can call instead. And you can also include local offices if you like for in-district calls. Now here's the options for a petition page. If you're planning to deliver these signatures, you can set your targets here. Like for instance, this is a petition to House members or senators, maybe even corporate targets. You can also assign a goal here, and a thermometer will appear on the page showing the progress. If you've been paying super close attention, you might also have noticed that a goal is available for all of the different page types. On the second screen for creating a petition page, you get to edit the content that appears on the screen. So first, under Appearance, you can customize the template set, which is your customized layout, look, and feel of your pages. Every client has their own customized template set that reflects their own branding as well as their own style and design choices. Some clients have also multiple template sets that they use for different purposes. Excuse me. And you'd select the correct one for the particular page that you're using here. Next, under petition text, you get to set the statement lead-in and statement text. Essentially, this is saying when someone opens up this petition page, what's going to convince them to sign the petition? Here, I've written a short blurb about how there is no planet B and we're running out of time to act on climate change. So here's the statement that they're going to see. If I scroll down a bit on the edit content screen, I get to the thank you text, which is what appears on the thank you page. And here I wrote, thanks for signing this petition. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the edit content screen, I get to select which questions I'm going to ask visitors and in what order. Email is always required, but we can customize everything else. On this page, I've chosen to require full name, email, and zip code. Asking for more information than that can be nice to have, but since it can also lead to lower action rates, I don't want to make it required in my example. On the next page, I get to choose what happens after someone has completed an action. This is the after action info screen. By default, ActionKit will create a thank you page and send users to it after they've signed the petition. But many clients like to send their users to a donation page after they've signed a petition to try to turn petition signers into donors. You can do that here by changing the redirect URL to a donation page of your choice, whether that's located in ActionKit or another service like ActBlue. It doesn't matter. You can use whichever URL you like. Also shown in this screenshot is a confirmation email section that thanks the user for signing the petition. So you can customize everything about this email from the layout and the styling to the subject line, the email body. And if you look closely, you're also going to see some personalization that I've added in there. And I'll show you how to do that personalization in a few slides. As a side note, if you have a donation page set up, make sure that you're also sending a confirmation email, because that way your donors will get a donation receipt, including the details of their donation. And donors really, really want that, so make sure that you have that included. Towards the bottom of the after action info screen, you can see sharing settings, and you have full control over how your pages get shared on Facebook and Twitter. By default, ActionKit is going to pull in your page content to make it easy for you to share the page, and it pre-populates the title and the description and the tweet. But you can also customize that description, the sharing image, the title, and the tweet for each page. Now this fourth page, delivery, this focuses on delivering petition signatures that you've collected, and you have a lot of options. First, highlighted in red here is you can generate a PDF, and you can customize the look and feel of that resulting PDF any way that you want it, which is great if you're doing in-person deliveries. One quick thing I should note is that petition pages don't automatically deliver to anyone unless you've set it up that way. You need to set up both your targets and your delivery settings. And when you've done both of those, then your petitions will deliver automatically. But unless you do both of those, it won't deliver automatically. So you can test, try things out, and see how it works without worrying that all of your test petition signatures are going to be delivered. On the delivery screen, if you choose to email your targets, then your targets are going to receive an email when someone signs your petition. Depending on the targets associated with the page, you might see fewer options. So for instance, if your page is only targeted to federal legislators, then you'll only have the option to email in batches. Now, on the other hand, if your page targets non-federal legislators, you're going to see other options, like being able to immediately email, or as in this screenshot, email immediately for a while before switching to batch updates. But I do want to really underline, even if you're targeting your page to a mix of federal and non-federal legislators, we only use batch delivery for federal legislators. Okay, with that out of the way, let's assume on this page, I'm targeting to some state legislators. Here I've chosen the recommended immediate then batch setting. And the reason why it's recommended is you want your targets to actually read your petition signatures. And the recommended setting is a good balance between making sure that they see them by delivering immediately and not spamming them, which would harm your sender reputation. So once they've received, about 30 messages in a 24-hour window, then we're going to say, okay, that's enough. We're going to switch to batch delivery. Now, once I've made those selections, I just need to configure my immediate delivery settings since I'm doing immediate and batch. So here I've created my subject, which is "End Subsidies for Big Oil." And I've got my email message in here. So, dear target name, I just signed a petition saying, and here's some personalization that says "End Subsidies for Big Oil." Here's my comment. Sincerely, Shannon Turner. So I will show you, I promise I'm going to show you how to do all of this personalization in the email in a couple of slides. But before we do that, let's take a look at the batch settings. Batch delivery essentially says we're going to send your target a big list of the signatures that they can download rather than flooding their inbox. So here I've configured my subject and my mailing body, again, with lots of personalization, and given a link for my target to download a spreadsheet of all of the signatures. Now, if your page targets the US House, you're going to see a checkbox for communicating with Congress. This is the US House's preferred way of receiving petition signatures. The good thing about communicating with Congress is that it goes through their officially supported system, so constituents will likely receive a response. The bad thing about it is that the system requires things like a salutation and a full address. So if you use that system, your page will also need to collect that information in order to deliver those signatures, which I know that a lot of clients don't like having to include a salutation like Mr. or Ms. And then collecting full address. Some clients don't like to do that if they don't have to. Unfortunately, it is required for the communicating with Congress system. Also, it's only available for the US House and not the Senate. Though I do want to mention that the Senate is working on building a similar system. Finally, if we click View on Site to see what this page looks like, this is what my petition page looks like. It looks pretty good. And if I actually sign the petition, this is what the after action page looks like. So we just saw what it looks like to create a petition page, check it out, see it live, and then sign it. But before we move on to call pages, I want to take a look at how to create a list of targets. So on the Pages tab in the right-hand navigational sidebar, if you expand the Targets menu, then you can choose from legislative targets or custom targets. Let's look at legislative targets first. If I click the blue plus sign at the top of the next page, I'm going to be sent to this screen where I can customize my legislative targets. Now, ActionKit has legislative data for US House and US Senate and all 50 state House and state Senates. So let's say I just want to target a mailing to Maryland State House Republicans. Here I've named my legislative target group, Maryland State House Republicans. Descriptive, it's great. So next I'm going to choose State House from the drop-down menu, type. And then I want to limit it just to Maryland, so I'm going to type in MD here. And then I can check the box to limit to just the Republican Party. And then if you wanted to, you could narrow this even further by excluding or including specific legislators that you wanted to target. And at the very bottom, once you've done all of those filters, you can see how many targets your choices end up with. Here's another example. I've created a list of US House Green New Deal supporters, and I'm adding them in one by one as more people come out in favor of the Green New Deal. You can get as complicated or as straightforward as you like with this targeting as it suits your purposes. So if you know 5 squishy senators, for instance, that you need to make sure go your way, you can target them like this. Or if you want to make sure that you're calling all Democrats or all Republicans, you can do that too. Now, it's important to remember that you don't have to limit yourself to just targeting legislators either. You could also target other elected officials like governors or city council members. You could target media or corporate CEOs. So a couple of years back, there was a campaign that many clients were running, contacting the CEOs of streaming services and asking them to drop R. Kelly from their platforms. So here's how you would create a custom target group to do that. Now, the jurisdiction depends on who you're targeting. If you're targeting city council members, then the jurisdiction is going to be city. If you're targeting governors, the jurisdiction is going to be state. Since this is streaming service CEOs, it really doesn't matter where our users live. We still want our users to be able to contact them. So we would choose all users for the jurisdiction. Optional fields here let you send your members to tweet or Facebook your targets. And if you have a lot of targets, you can upload a spreadsheet of them here. So I only have a couple of these targets for the streaming service CEOs, so I can just add them in manually. Here I'm adding in their names and contact information for the CEOs of Spotify and Pandora. Then I can use this targeting in a call page, sending my users to call them, asking them to mute R. Kelly. So on my Action Basics screen under Call Target Groups, I would then search for streaming service CEOs, mute R. Kelly. Now on the Edit Content screen of my call pages, this is what the Let's Call the US Senate About Fossil Fuels call page would look like. Here we have our introduction text. And as promised, I'm going to show you how to do the personalization. So here in my script text, I'm saying, hello, my name is, and you can see this code that says user.firstname default friend, and I live in user.city default your city. So here you can go to the snippets menu. If you click this highlighted in red here, it's going to open up a little miniature pop-up window that you can move around. And this little snippet menu allows you to scroll through and see all of the different things that are available for this page. So you could memorize how to do this code that inserts a user's first name, or you could open up the snippet menu and scroll to where it says users and then first name, and then here to add in the the senator's name. Um, I'm calling to ask Senator so and so to remove subsidies for oil companies. Um, that is where I would do it here. Pages with targets and then Senator slash Representative Smith. And then finally on this page, I'm going to add some survey question text. This is going to be for the call report. So after someone has made a call, they're going to report back and let you know how it went. That's good to know, whether it's, oh, I got a busy signal, I kept trying, but I just kept getting a busy signal, or I left a voicemail, or I spoke to someone and they seemed receptive to what I was saying, that sort of thing. Like other types of pages, you can also customize what appears on the thank you page after someone has taken action here. Now, just like on every other type of page, it's worth asking, what information should we be asking of our users? So for this screenshot, I'm using a call page that targets state legislators because I wanted to highlight, when you're targeting state legislators, you often can't figure out who someone's state legislator is just by having their zip code. So you also need to require street address in order to figure out, oh, this is exactly where they live. This is who their state legislator is. So this little red message will appear saying, hey, since you're targeting to state legislators, I need to require street address. So let's go ahead and see what our US Senate call page looks like. Looks kind of like a petition page, but when we enter our information and click submit, it's going to send us to a page that has our call script and a list of targets for us to call and a way for us to report how the call went. Now, before we move on to mailings, let's go back to the Pages tab one more time and see a way to compare the performance of our pages. In the sidebar menu, let's go to Compare Pages. And on the following screen, we can enter one or more pages that we'd like to compare the performance of. So you can see the total number of actions, how much money was given, by how many people, and you can see how many new members there were, how many clicks, and the conversion rate of each page. This is just one of the many reports available to you, and later in the training, we're also going to briefly cover the Reports tab, where you'll be able to carve up data on actions in many, many different ways that will help guide your decision-making processes. For now, let's take a deep breath and move on to mailings. So on screen here is the Mailings tab, where on the left you can browse mailing drafts and see recently sent mailings. In this screenshot, I have arrows pointing at the two main ways that you'd create a mailing. If your organization is creating mailing models, you'll probably want to use the Draft from Model button and choose the relevant mailing model. Remember, mailing models are just like page models in that they are templates that you can copy from that are, if you have like a page model that's a petition model, you're going to use that on lots of different petitions, but you probably have lots of different types of emails that you send, whether it's a weekly newsletter or a specific like petition update or follow up. So you may have different models for those different types of mailings. If you do, this is where you'll find them. Otherwise, you'll have Create New Draft, and that's where you can create your new mailings. Once I've created that draft, I'm taken to the Compose Mailing screen, where I'll be able to configure all of the details of my mailing. The first thing that we're going to do here is set our subject line. And here I've made the subject line, "It's time for a Green New Deal." If you want to configure the preview text, you can also do that here too. Now, preview text is what appears after the subject line, but before you've opened a mailing. You can often see that on your phone. The subject line and the preview text, those are the two things that really help to encourage you to open up the email when you're browsing through all of your unopened emails. So one thing I do want to mention though is that if you leave the preview text blank, it's just going to use the mailing's body as the rest of the preview text. So I do want to call attention here to the help text highlighted in red, because it often has important hints or clarifications or reminders of how things work. And when I was a client, I always found these little hints so helpful. So I wanted to really highlight it. In this case, the help text gives us a time-saving hint about how to create multiple subject lines very quickly. So if you wanted to use multiple subject lines with this mailing, one way that you could do it is click this blue plus sign for each subject line that you wanted and add them in one by one. But there's a quicker way. Let's say on staff, we discuss which subject lines we're going to use in Slack. Here I've highlighted the subject lines that we agreed on. So I'm going to highlight and then copy, and then I'm going to paste them into this subject line box. Then ActionKit is going to automatically put each line of text into its own subject line. Now, the way that subject line testing works in ActionKit is it's going to send out emails about equally among all the subject lines that you choose. So about 25% of recipients are going to get the subject line, "It's time for a Green New Deal." Another 25% are going to get, "Did you see who came out in support of the Green New Deal?" Another 25% is going to get, "There is no Planet B." And the last 25% is going to get, "Our planet is warming." Now that we've entered in our subject lines, we need to figure out who is this email going to be from. You can choose from a selection of from lines in this drop-down menu, or if you notice the blue plus sign, you can create one on the fly. Typically, you'll leave the reply to blank, and then it'll use the same address as in the from line. But if you did need to customize it, you could do that here. Just like on the pages, this notes field is visible only to you and to other members of your staff. Recipients of your mailing do not see it. This is an internal field to help you and other staff members know what this mailing was all about. Be descriptive. Say, what it is and why you're doing it. So here I have Green New Deal Advocacy Push, February 2019. Explain what the mailing is about. This is especially helpful when you have new staff coming on board who are analyzing the results of old pages and old mailings. Notes can be really useful in that regard. And again, just like with pages, tags are categories for what this mailing is all about. So your team has likely set up a very specific way that they tag and categorize these pages and mailings. So make sure you're following the recommendation of your team. When we come to the wrapper, this is going to be what controls the layout and look and feel of your mailing. So this template with sidebar, this is what it looks like. Just by changing the wrapper that we're using, not changing any of the content at all, we can completely change the look and feel of this mailing. Now, your team has already created a set of mailing wrappers with your own branding and your own style. Generally, you're probably only going to use one or two different mailing wrappers and in different situations. So, for instance, you might have one layout for general emails to your membership, and you might have a different one that's for newsletters or a different one for fundraising. So, follow what your team's doing. Now, the landing page that you created in ActionKit, this is the page that you want to link to from your mailing. So a petition page or a call page or a donation page or some other type of page. This is your main call to action. We're also going to talk about customization in a few slides, but it works for mailings the same way that it works for pages. So if your mailing is personalized to say, call Senator Warren or call Senator Harris, you're going to need to use a landing page here, and you're going to need to make sure that that page has the appropriate targets already set up. Now, if we scroll down a little bit and we get to the mailing body, this is where we write the main content of the email. The greeting, the lead, the call to action, the meat of the mailing, everything about the mailing goes here. Now this is the visual view where you can see roughly what your mailing content looks like as you type it in. And if you click code up here, which is highlighted in red, then you come to code view where you can see the HTML code that is making up this email behind the scenes. You can switch back and forth between visual and code as necessary to adjust your mailing depending on your preferences. But I do want to mention that some clients have disabled the visual editor and only use code. So if you don't see the option for visual mode, just be aware. But for me, I'm going to go back to visual mode because it's easier to read. But just know that I can go back and forth and switch as I need it. So personalization for mailings, like I mentioned before, works the same for mailings as it does for pages. Click on the snippets menu here. It's going to open up this snippets menu. And then this, if I click from users and then first name, it's going to insert this first name snippet right at my cursor. That lets you do things like, hello, Shannon, in the greeting of your email. Now, there are so many snippets that are available to you. We really don't have time to get into all of them, but I did want to share a few of the big categories to get your gears turning, and then you can also, at this link, go ahead and find out more. So you can tell someone to call their senator, and you can say by name, like call Senator Warren, call Senator Harris, and then give them their senator's phone number. Even if they have a local office number, you can do that. And you have every option to make your sentences with those targets grammatically correct, saying he or she or they as appropriate, or his or her or their as appropriate, pluralizing, so on. There's also, for donations, you can do highest previous donation snippets and a whole host of similar donation-based snippets that let you customize based on that specific user's past giving. There's snippets to recruit members to an event. You can do if-else logic trees. You can check on a user's custom fields. There's so much that you can do with personalization here. And we could really spend a whole hour just on the snippets, but sadly, we have to move on. So I'm going to leave you with this link, and now we're going to go onward to the preview. The best way to see what a snippet would do is to view it in the preview. And of course, this is a great way to make sure that your mailing looks exactly the way that you want it to. So if we scroll down a little bit, we find the preview pane. And if your preview pane is collapsed, you can expand it by clicking on the little preview right here. Now, this preview will automatically update as you make changes to your mailing. I think this looks pretty good. I can see all of the way that my mailing looks. I can make changes, make edits to my mailing body, come back to the preview, make sure it looks right. And for the most part, the preview is going to update automatically. But if you've made some changes that aren't showing up, you can click the little update button down here to force the preview pane to refresh. There's also a switch toward the bottom that lets you see what your mailing will look like on a smaller screen. And if we click that now, then you can see that the mailing has squished in a bit, looking a bit more like what it would look like on a phone. And this is pretty important because a large percentage of your members are going to be opening up their emails on their phone. So you want your mailing looking good at all sizes. Keep in mind that you can also switch between that mobile and the desktop preview to get a sense of what your mailing will look like on each. You're not just stuck in mobile forever. And also because every screen size is a little bit different. Every phone is different, every computer is different. These aren't perfect. They're meant to be close approximations to give you a sense of what it looks like rather than the canonical truth. You can also specify a user to see a preview for. This allows you to see what the mailing would look like for a specific user. Now, you can enter in someone's user ID if you know it. If you're anything like me, you don't memorize people's user IDs, but you do probably know their email address. So you can enter in their email address, and then click update to get a preview. Oh, and this one is targeted to Shannon. So this email is going to go to Shannon. So, okay, it looks good to me. So preview can be useful when you're testing snippets, but just remember getting a proof is the most reliable way to see exactly what an email is going to look like. And this is also the best way to test what it's going to look like on mobile as well. So the true test comes in sending a proof mailing to yourself. This is how you do it. So a proof mailing is one of the actual emails that we will send to someone, except we send it to you instead of to them. Once you're satisfied with your preview, you're happy with your mailing, you're ready to move on to targeting, first send yourself a proof. And many clients will generate a proof and send it around to staff for final checks and edits, or some of them even do it earlier as part of the draft stages. So it's up to you. Follow what your team is doing. But this is a great way to see exactly what your mailing is going to look like, make sure all of your snippets are perfect, and also to see what is this going to look like on mobile. So here's my proof mailing. It looks good to me. But if there's a problem with one of your snippets that creates the personalization, it'll probably show up here if you get enough proofs. So if you do find a problem, go ahead and make your edits in the email and then get more proofs to make sure everything looks good. Next, we're going to move off of the compose screen and onto the targeting screen. This is where we get to choose who receives this email. And I want to mention that if we click add criteria to the set, we have such a big drop-down menu. There are so many options that it doesn't even fit on this big screenshot. So let's narrow in and see just a couple of the main options that you have. One of the most commonly used options is the list. Now, most clients have multiple mailing lists set up for different purposes. But almost all clients use the main email list as their main targeting. So you're going to use this in pretty much every mailing you send, with a few exceptions. This includes the main email list. You can get there from add criteria lists and then type in the main email list. Your organization may have multiple email lists. including some that are not supposed to receive any mailings, but they're not necessarily unsubscribed. But this will let you target just to my main email list. So you can also target by who has taken action on a specific page. Here, if highlighted in red, if I were to hover over where it says action here, there's another bit of help text that pops up. And this says, targets users who have taken action on the pages you choose. So I want to say, I want to target this mailing to anybody who has taken action on the page. We need to invest in solar jobs. So anyone who's taken action on that page will receive this mailing. So here I've chosen 2 pages, Invest in Solar Jobs and End Big Oil Subsidies. This will give me anyone who's taken action on either page or both pages. You can also target by events. So who lives near this event that I've set up? Let's say I have an event campaign for congressional town halls for the Green New Deal, and I wanted anyone who lives within 10 miles of any of those events to be able to attend. I also have some checkboxes to make sure that I'm not sending someone who lives on the border of 2 states to an event in the wrong state or to an event in the wrong congressional district. You can also make sure that you only target to people who are in the same county as your event if you wanted to do that. You can also target by event date and event fields as well. So again, lots of options. You can also target to anyone who has ever donated or just active recurring donors or anyone who's ever given a recurring donation, people whose cards are about to expire, and so on. If you wanted to target people who have received a specific email, so this is commonly used when, let's say a link was bad and you need to send out a corrected link, then you can choose that mailing that you want to target by. Now, a few slides ago, we targeted by who has taken action on a set of pages. That's fine if you have a few specific pages in mind, but if your organization is really good about tagging pages, you can instead target by tag. And this can be useful because you could, let's say, if you remember all of your different climate change related pages, you could add them in one by one to all of the different pages in your targeting. Or you could say, I've already done the work to tag all of my pages that are relevant with climate change. Now I can say, hey, send this mailing to anybody who has taken action on a page that's been tagged with climate change. You can also target by location, so you have a lot of options here as well. You could do zip code or city radius. You could do congressional district. You could do state house or state senate. You could do states. These are the most common ways to do it. And heads up that if you're targeting by state house or state senate, you usually need someone's full address to know which one they're in. This is just the same as before. So for instance, if you don't have someone's full street address, then you might not know which state house or state senate district they're in. And so you wouldn't be able to target to them. The query library option allows you to target by a query report that you've previously written. Let's say I wrote a report called Many Recent Actions, which gives me a list of users who have taken several actions in the last 90 days. These are my most active users, so I want to send them this mailing, and this would be a good way for me to target them. And just like a few slides ago when I had, target anyone who has taken action on either of these pages or both, like up top here, targeting to multiple query reports from the query library is like target to anyone who meets the criteria of either of these reports. So entering a number here will limit the number of people who receive your mailing under limits and ordering. So for example, if you have 50,000 people who match your targeting, but you only want to send to 10,000 of them right now, you would enter 10,000 here. This is often used for testing a mailing before going for a full list send or to stagger calls so that people don't get a busy signal. Once you've finished your targeting, the next screen is the proof and send screen. This is your chance to review your mailing, make sure it looks good and that you've gotten all of the details perfect before you hit send. Here we can review the subject lines that I've chosen. You can see my from line, my internal notes, the wrapper, which controls the layout, landing page, and the tags associated with the mailing. You can change the notes and the tags later on if you like, but everything else cannot be changed once the mailing has been sent. If I scroll down, I can review who will receive this mailing. Right now, this shows that my targeting will send to 30 people. And if I take a look at my includes and excludes, I can make sure that this looks right and that it aligns with what I expect my targeting count to be. So I look, yes, my includes and my excludes, yeah, that looks about right to be 30 people. Okay, great. Now, some clients have customized a pre-send dashboard that's going to give you a checklist or a set of reminders before you send your mailing. So here I've customized my dashboard to remind me of all of the steps I need to make sure that I've done before this mailing is ready to go out. Everything from drafting and reviewing and incorporating those edits to getting proofs, and then finally all the way down where I click send. And again, on the proof and send screen, you have the option to send proofs, and it works exactly the same as it does on the compose screen. If you have access to be able to send mailings, you'll see a few options at the very bottom of this page. So send will send the mailing. There's schedule for later, which lets you schedule the mailing for a later time, which can include a specific time that you set, or it could be, I want to send this mailing to the recipients at 9 a.m. in their time zone. So you can do things like that. Or you could also do make recurring, which is especially helpful for setting up mailings like a welcome series or getting donors with an expiring credit card to renew. And once I've actually sent, if I check my email, it really did send. I want to point out some things about user recognition, just to clarify what's happening here. When you send a mailing to someone, ActionKit's going to put a unique identifier, which is the AK ID, into the link so that the recipient doesn't have to enter in their information every time. In the mailing I sent out inviting people to sign up for this webinar, there's a link to this page. And when you clicked it, it probably recognized you. So let's say I received the mailing myself. I clicked on the link to RSVP and highlighted in red here, it says, not Shannon Turner, click here. But I am Shannon Turner, so I can just click sign up. But some of you probably had this mailing forwarded to you by a coworker. So some of you probably had to click, nope, I'm not Shannon Turner, click here. And when you clicked that, the user recognition will disappear and you'll get to enter in your own name and email address here. But behind the scenes, ActionKit knows that your colleague referred you to this page. Or maybe your colleague forwarded this email, but it never showed you, not Shannon Turner, click here. And you might wonder why not. Now, if your colleague has already taken action on that page, ActionKit assumes, oh, they've already taken action, they forwarded it onto you, and so it's not going to fill in their details in this form. But sometimes let's take a look at it a different way. It can be helpful to see it broken out in bullet points. So by default, ActionKit will recognize your users. That's great. Here's how it works. So Shannon receives an email, and I click to the action page. The action page recognizes me by my AK ID. I then take action on the page. Then I'm going to forward the email to Tanya. Tanya clicks. The action page sees my AK ID, but it knows that I've already taken action, so it shows Tanya a fresh form. But chances are, if they're going to forward an email to a friend, they've already clicked through and taken action themselves. So more commonly, or another way that this could happen is I receive an email, I don't take action, and I say, hey, Tanya, I can't be there for this Advocacy 101 webinar, but maybe you'll enjoy it. And then I forward the email to Tanya, Tanya clicks, and then the action page says, not Tanya, or sorry, not Shannon, click here. So user recognition is a really important feature. It can really help to improve action rates. So here in my example, clicking my Call the US Senate email sends me straight to the call script page. And since call pages are a higher bar ask, user recognition is especially useful here. So after your mailing has been out in the world for a little bit, people are going to open it and read it and click it and then take action. And you're going to want to know, how well is my mailing doing? So from the Mailings tab, you can click the Sent Mailings up top. You can find your mailing and then click View to see the performance. In this screenshot here, I'm looking at the email I sent to you, inviting you to join this webinar, at least the version from back in February 2019. Here we can see how many recipients there were, how many people opened, how many people clicked, how many people took action. Now, this particular mailing only had one subject line, but if your mailing has multiple subject lines, you'll see opens and clicks and actions broken out by subject line as well. This next table shows forwards. So this mailing in particular, being a webinar training, got a lot of forwards and a few new users as well. Probably a few folks had this email forwarded to by a coworker. Scrolling down a bit on this page, we can see unsubscribes and bounces and spam complaints for this mailing. And since this is a mailing to ActionKit clients, I'm not surprised that 0 people unsubscribed or marked this as spam. So thank you for not doing that. And then we can also see how many clicks each link in our mailing received. I only had one link in this mailing, but it had 25 clicks, so about a 10% click rate to the RSVP page. Before we move on, I do want to highlight one thing that I've seen confuse a lot of folks and how to avoid it. So before you can use page target snippets, you need a landing page. But you'll probably encounter this specific error from time to time when you're customizing your email with things like a page target's name. So this error message says, save your targeting or specify a user for preview. What's actually happening is something that we need to fix on the targeting screen, not the compose screen. On the targeting screen, there's a checkbox under special criteria for landing page targets. And this checkbox says to ActionKit, I want the people who are constituents of my landing page's targets to receive this mailing. So if my landing page targets are House Republicans, only people whose representative is a Republican will receive this mailing. If you're getting this error on the last page and you have a landing page set up, you probably need to check this box. And generally, if you're using targeting with the landing page, this checkbox is generally what you want for your targeting. Let's move on to users. We're going to briefly cover users, specifically how to find users and view their action, mailing, and donation history. So from the Users tab, you can search using the search box up top, which lets you search users by name and email, zip code, or if you have it memorized, the user ID. And please note that this search box looks the same on the Pages tab and the Mailings tab as it does on the Users tab. But if you're on the Pages tab, it's going to search Pages. If you're on the Mailings tab, it's going to search Mailings. Pay attention to the help text here. Since we're on the Users tab, this box is going to search users. But we have more options for finding the users you're looking for. If you expand the Search Queries button right here in the navigational sidebar, you can see that there are queries available that you can use to search for your users, like, for instance, users with active recurring orders, highlighted in red here. And you may also have other options as well. There's the advanced search, which lets you search for users who match your criteria. So let's take a look at that. Now, if you've used the Reports tab and the Query Builder, this screen should look pretty similar. If not, don't worry, we're going to get to that in the next section. So if you're just searching by email or name, you could probably use the regular search box from a few slides ago, but the advanced search really lets you hone in and see some specifics. So here's what the advanced search looks like. You can search by things like the number of actions someone has taken, or I want everyone who's taken action on this specific page. I want anyone who's given at least this amount of money. Where do they live? And so on. So here in this screenshot, I'm searching for anyone who lives in California and has donated a total of at least $250. That's just one example. And here's what search results look like. Probably looks just like the Pages Mail tab or the Mailings tab, except it's users instead of pages or mailings. So you can click their name or click their edit button to see more details. On the user overview screen, once you've found the user that you want to view, clicking edit will take you to their overview page. You can see a summary of information about them. So you can see their name, their email address, their subscription status, how many actions they've taken, what tags they have, and so on. If we scroll down a bit in their user summary, we can see more details like their sharing history, how many times did they share a page on Twitter or Facebook. We see a little donation table giving a summary of their donation history. And for clients who have the Salesforce sync enabled, if this user has a record in Salesforce, you'll be able to see that as well, including a link that goes directly to their Salesforce contact page. This is a training about advocacy, so address tends to be pretty important. If you scroll down even more, you can see their address as well as their representatives. And here, this user lives in Maryland's 8th district. If you click on the address, it's going to expand into multiple text boxes so that you can make adjustments or corrections as necessary. And if you change a person's address, we're going to automatically determine who their representative is and adjust that accordingly. Scrolling down a bit more, you can see phone numbers and custom user fields. Here, this user has two custom user fields that I think give a pretty good picture of some of the things that custom user fields are typically used for. So here we have my employer action kit and my occupation software developer. But I've also seen clients do some really creative things with custom user fields. So if you want to find them or set them, this is where you're gonna look for them. But for now, let's move on. Go ahead and scroll all the way back up to the top. Click the button for Actions, which is right next to Overview, right under your user's name. And we're going to go to the Action History. So from here, you can see a summary of all of the actions the user has taken since they joined your list, along with an explanation of which pages they took action on, what types of pages they were, and so on. So you can see I made a donation in April of 2020. I completed a survey in July of 2019, and I signed a petition in June of 2019. By clicking on this row, you can see that I've expanded it, and it shows me more details about this action, including the specific answers that I gave to the survey questions, it has my action ID, and more. Clicking mailings, we can view the mailing history. So you can see not only which mailings have you sent them before, but also which of those they have opened and clicked and acted on. Like with the action history, you can click each entry in order to expand it and see more details. If you were to click the mailings here, you'd get to see not only did I click on a link in the mailing, but you'd be able to see specifically which link I clicked on. Clicking the donations button up top will take you to their donation history, where you can see a summary of all of the donations they've made, including the number of one-time donations, the number of monthlies, totals, the amount they've given, the average, and so on. Let's take a closer look at the donation history. This is where you can see the exact details of when the donations were made, what type they were, what the status of that donation is, and the amount. This is also where you could reverse the payment, which is highlighted in red here, if they ask for a refund. If you need to reverse the payment, I want to emphasize that you should reverse the payment in ActionKit by clicking this button rather than in your merchant account directly. Same goes for if you need to update your donor's address. You should do that in ActionKit on the overview screen. And as with actions and mailings, you can click on a donation row to see even more details about that donation. So let's click that donation to expand it and see. Now that this one is expanded, we can see the payment processor. We can see, oh, this was made with a credit card. We can see which page this donation was made on and the source. Every now and then you might get a donor asking you to resend their donation receipt because they didn't receive one or they lost it. And we added in a new feature that lets you do just that. Essentially, the way it works is when the original confirmation mailing is sent to your donor, we save an exact copy of it. Now, the resend confirmation mailing feature was added in early 2019, so it's only available for donations since then. And that means this resend confirmation mailing link, that's only going to appear if you can actually resend the mailing. For old donations where you can't resend the mailing because we don't have it, you won't see the link. So in case you see the link for some donations but not others, that's why. Now, finally, we're going to move on and do a lightning review of reports. Reports let you measure how well your pages and mailings have performed. So it's things like how many actions have people taken on a petition page, how many donations someone has made, how many donations came in on a specific page, what's the open click action rate of a mailing, and so on. Browse all, which is highlighted in red here, lets us see which reports we have available. On the reports screen, we can see reports that we can run, and we can search and filter as well. On the right-hand side, highlighted in red, let's filter by WAWD standard. These are built-in ActionKit reports, and there are a large number of useful reports created just for you. You can also create new reports yourself, and your team has likely created lots of useful reports, but I wanted to highlight that there's nearly 300 reports that come standard with ActionKit. So filter by the WAWD standard, browse the reports that show up, because you might find one that does exactly what you're trying to do, or you might find one that's really, really close that you could then copy and remix to meet your needs. Let's go back to the Reports tab real quick and take a look at some more built-in reports. Highlighted here are 3 reports that are really useful, so let's take a closer look at each. We're going to start with Download Actions. Download Actions lets you download a spreadsheet full of data about your actions. And lots of clients will use this to download survey responses. That's the most common use for it, I think. And you have a lot of different ways that you can customize this spreadsheet that you get as a result, including things like email, the respondent's name and address and phone number, that sort of thing. You can also compare mailings. So here you can search for 2 or more similar mailings that you want to compare to one another. So in this example, I've searched for 2 different mailings that have similar content, but different subject lines and different levels of urgency to see which one compared better or performed better. So let's click compare. And up top, we can see a top line analysis of opens and clicks and action rates with error bars, and it's all broken out by each mailing. Here we can see that mailing 5153 had a higher click rate, even though opens were the same. Scrolling down a bit, we can see the raw numbers of opens and clicks and actions. So again, here we can see that 5153, it had better click-through rates, but it also had better action rates. There's also a section for selecting winner, and here's what this does. Selecting winner will not send the email automatically without you clicking send. All it does is create a copy of the mailing with the same targeting as the original with the limit removed. But it doesn't send without you clicking send, so don't be afraid to select a winner. Toward the bottom, you can see how many opens and forwards and new users each mailing got. So if we look at mailing 5153 and 5154, we remember from previous slides that 5153 was doing much better in terms of clicks and actions, but actually 5154 had more forwards and more new users. So if those were the important metrics for us, we might want to send 5154 instead. Now, just like we saw with the Compare Pages report earlier in this presentation, you can also reach the Compare Pages report from the Reports tab. So you can find that in both places. And just like before, it works exactly the same. Lets you see a comparison of how many actions, how many donations, how many people took action, how many new members there were, and so on. But let's go back to the Reports tab and create a new report. If you click New Query, this is going to let you create a new report of the type that you want. You have so many options to choose from based on the types of information that you want to include in your report. Most of these categories have at least some overlap with the others. So for instance, a user's report is going to have some information about the donations that user has made. It's going to have some information about the actions they've taken, and so on. You can often find information about, you know, page performance using either the page query type or the action query type, because the bottom line is more than one query type can often work to get the information that you need, but you might need to play around with the different query types to see precisely which one you need for this specific report. It takes a little bit of practice to figure it out, but here are some of the hints. I think of when I'm trying to create a user report and I'm looking for specific user contact data or specific information about the users, probably going to go with the user query type. If I'm looking for actions, like as they relate to a page, I'm going to go with the action query type. The donation query type can tell me information about specific donations, or it can tell me information about aggregating or fundraising on a very aggregate level. And then pages query type is good for answering questions like how well did my page perform, especially relative to other pages. Mailing query type, how well did my mailing perform relative to other mailings. Some good general advice is take a look at the existing WAWD standard reports, make a copy of those reports, and then tinker with them to make them even better. But really, this just takes a lot of practice. When you do create a report and you've selected your query type, then you're going to have two options to choose from. You've got display columns, which allow you to choose what data you want to appear in your report. So in other words, if you were creating a spreadsheet, what columns would you have in that spreadsheet? And then there's filter criteria, which allow you to narrow down precisely which fields match your criteria in order to include in your report. So in other words, if you have no filter criteria, you want all records. And as you add in filter criteria, you're narrowing in to just the data that you want. So let's go ahead and add in some display columns and filter criteria. Here we can see some of the choices that are available for user query types. Keep in mind, each query type has a different set of columns available, though there's a lot of overlap between the categories, as we mentioned. Now, there's so much information to sift through in these drop-down menus, so I really want to call out that you can type to search. If I start typing for district, because I want my first column to be the US legislative district. So I start typing it in and it's going to narrow those results down from this to just the one. So here in this example for my display columns, I have two columns. I've got one for US legislative district and I've got another for the total number of users, which is going to be grouped by that US legislative district. So when I run this report, my results will have two columns. But how many rows is it going to have? That all depends on my filter criteria. Here, I've limited my results to only users who have taken action on a page that is tagged with Green New Deal. When I press the run button, I can run this report that I've made. And taken together, this is going to let me see who's taken action on a Green New Deal page for all US legislative districts. So here I can see my results. If you click the button where it says unsorted, it's going to change to ascending. And if you click it again, it's going to change to descending. And this is how you can sort your results. So if I were to do that and then press run again, it's going to sort by the districts who had the most users taken action, because I'm sorting by the total number of users descending from most to least. And that's what we get in this result set. So we really could spend a full 90 minutes. We actually have 90-minute trainings on using the query builder, running reports. So sadly, we didn't have too much time for that today, but hopefully that was a good overview. And if you're interested in learning more about reports, we've got lots of resources for you to continue your learning there. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of built-in reports. A few of my favorites that relate to advocacy are these. We've got the page drill down dashboard, which gives you a detailed list of stats for the specific page that you're looking for. There's the call page dashboard, which lets you break out stats of call actions that are broken out by targets. This is especially useful for seeing things like how many calls has a specific target gotten? Do we need to push more calls on, this target versus another? And then there's the action rates, so your monthly progress report. And this gives you some really top-line stats and charts related to your action rates. So go ahead and do a search for these in the reports tab and check them out. So we have reached the end. We covered a ton of material in a very short time. Thank you for coming along with me on this lightning review of 4 different sections of ActionKit as they relate to advocacy. So I'm also going to be sending around this recording to folks on Monday. You're also going to get a copy of the slides, so keep an eye out for that email. And I also would love to run more trainings like this in the future. So you're going to get a survey with that email that asks, what other trainings would you like to see? So once you've received that survey, completed it, then let us know what else you want to see. In the meantime, here are some links and resources that I hope you find really helpful. We've got the ActionKit manual, which has all of the documentation and resources. There's tons of information here. There's tutorials and examples. So in our blog, and our blog also has step-by-step guides for doing very specific practical things that you're looking to do. So thank you everyone for taking the time to chat, and have a great day.